So this channel so far has basically been like, reasons why everyone thinks I'm crazy. Which will bring you to the conclusion that I'm crazy. Continuing with that theme, I am going to tell you a story about some things that I do during class that make everyone think I'm crazy. One specifically, which is laughing to myself in the middle of class. I don't do that too frequently, but there's a couple of things that will provoke it almost immediately, and one of those is when a teacher uses human beings as like an analogy for something like scientific. When I was a freshman, I was in Modern World History Honors, which is a class that a lot of freshmen take, and it's basically the history of the world, starting with the Renaissance and ending with now. So he wasn't the guy who was teaching the class the first half of the year, wasn't the actual teacher. He was this kid like fresh out of college. He was our permanent sub because our teacher was on maternity leave, and he was a really good teacher. He was a really great teacher. He just hadn't quite grasped the concept of like freshmen are really immature, and sometimes he would say things that we thought were hilarious that he just like didn't even get the joke for a good half hour. So this class, it was first period class, 7:20 to like 9 o'clock in the morning. There were like 13 kids in the class. It was a really small class. And that day I happened to be the only one of my friends in class. And I sat right up in the front row, all by myself, and he's talking to us about like the Renaissance and the scientific revolution, and he starts talking about gravity. Now obviously like every freshman ever knows what gravity is, but just to kind of clarify, since like it's a really big deal and all, he decided to use an analogy. So the analogy he chose to use for some reason was basically to demonstrate that all objects in the universe are attracted to all other objects in the universe. He went up in front of the class, picked up the nearest object, which was a stapler, and held it up and said, "I am attracted to this object." So like, just like every other 14-year-old with a stupid, immature sense of humor, I thought that was hilarious. So I kind of, caught myself, didn't laugh too much. I was proud of myself for keeping that in, to be honest. I thought it was really funny. So I'm just kind of sitting there, and then he pauses and goes, "This object is attracted to me." So I started giggling a little bit. I heard like 1 or 2 snickers from the back of the classroom. That was it. Like, no one else got the joke. Like, I could not figure out why I was the only person who was laughing. And then he's just to top it all off, he's looking at me a little suspiciously, but he just doesn't get it. So we're like 10 minutes past that point, and he's just teaching. He's moved on to a completely different subject. Like, he's not even holding the stapler anymore. And I'm still laughing. And then he just goes, like, just like this, like, realization face. He, like, jumped a little bit. Looks me straight in the eye and says, "And for the record, Manon, I am not attracted to inanimate objects." So obviously I lost it. Like, how can you keep it together when a teacher addresses you in the front of the class to tell you that they are not, in fact, attracted to staplers? So, like, I was just gone for the rest of the period. I was laughing so hard, I couldn't stop. I would, like, forget about it for a minute, and then a couple of minutes later, like, I would just think of it again and start laughing, and something would remind me, and it was awful. So at the end of the class, he won't, like, I'm trying to get out of there as fast as I can, because, obviously, I'm mildly mortified. Especially since I was the only person who really got it, yet he called me out for it in front of the whole class, and everyone was just really confused. So he kind of, like, came up to me while I was packing my stuff up and said, "Manon, you seem to have been carrying out some sort of private joke throughout the class." So I just kind of said, "Oh yeah, one of my friends said something, like, really funny yesterday. I just can't stop remembering it." And I walked out of the classroom as fast as I could. I don't know what happened to him after he stopped teaching my class. I think he like became an actual teacher, and I feel like he had like a class at my school for a little while, and then he left, and I'm afraid that I might have like scared him out of being a teacher. I mean, like, me in a class that spends a whole term talking about communism, that's great. Unless you've never taught 14-year-olds before, and then it's probably terrifying. So, I really hope I didn't scare him away from being a teacher, because he was a really good teacher, except for accidentally declaring his attraction to staplers in the middle of class, but he was a really good teacher. So I hope he's teaching somewhere where he has slightly more normal students than me. So there's a story you probably didn't care about in the first place for you. Enjoy! And by the way, Sarah, the story I told you that I was going to tell you at the end of French class, this was the story. See what I meant by I'll tell you tonight?